The war had been burning for hours when Thetis made his final mistake. He stood between fleets, arms raised, voice cutting through the chaos on every frequency. "Cease fire! Stand down!" The coalition had won. Viltrum was rubble, the empire broken. There was no point in more death. Thrag came through the debris like a bullet through smoke. No warning, no speech, just speed and intention. His hand closed around Thetis's throat, mid-sentence wrenched sideways, and the leader of the coalition worlds stopped talking forever. The head tumbled away, blood crystallizing in vacuum, and Thrag held it up where every ship, every soldier, every camera could see. Mark Grayson felt his stomach drop. He hung 50 meters back, flanked by what remained of the strike team. His father drifted to his left, silent. Oliver was somewhere behind, breathing hard through the comm. Alan the alien had gone completely still. Nobody moved. The coalition fleets didn't fire. The Viltrumites didn't press. For one long moment, the war just stopped and stared. Then space tore open. Not a portal, not a warp gate. Just a crack, sharp and silent, like reality had been folded wrong and someone ripped through the crease. No light spilled out. No energy signature flared. It simply opened, and a figure stepped through. Mark's first thought was Viltrumite. The proportions were wrong, too broad in the shoulders, too dense, but the aura of raw physicality matched. Another hidden weapon. Another trump card Thrag had kept in reserve. Then the figure turned slightly, and Mark saw the eyes. Flat black, utterly calm. Not Viltrumite. The newcomer stood motionless in the void, scanning the battlefield with the kind of patience that didn't belong in a war zone. No aggression, no panic. Just observation. His suit was red and black, tight across a frame built like condensed gravity. White gloves, white boots, no weapon. Thrag noticed. Of course he did. The Grand Regent turned slowly, still holding Thetis's head, and locked eyes with the intruder. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then Thrag released the head. Let it drift. His posture shifted not into fear, but into calculation. A predator recognizing another predator. The figure didn't speak. Mark felt pressure bloom across his chest. Not physical, not mental. Just presence spreading outward like a shock wave that never arrived. His breathing hitched. Beside him, Nolan stiffened. Around them, the Viltrumite formation began to buckle. Not from attacks, from proximity. 3 of the younger soldiers Mark didn't know their names, collided mid-flight, rebounding off each other with bone-breaking force. One spun into a derelict hull and didn't come back out. Another clawed at the vacuum, like he was drowning. The intruder hadn't moved, hadn't even glanced their direction. Mark tried to push forward, tried to close the distance and hit a wall that wasn't there. His flight path bent. His momentum bled away. He hung in place, muscles screaming, and realized this wasn't a fight yet. This was a warning. Nolan spoke low over the private channel. "Mark, don't." "What is that?" "I don't know, but it is not here for us." The man's gaze shifted, swept across the coalition fleets, across the scattered Viltrumites, across the suspended bodies and the burning ruins and the blood-slicked debris fields. Then he spoke. One sentence. No amplification, no theatrics. "Move the civilians." The voice cut through every frequency, every comm system, every mind that could hear. Mark blinked. Civilians. There were no civilians here. This was deep space, a military graveyard. Cecil Stedman's voice crackled in his ear, tight and clipped. "Mark, get back to the flagship. Now." "What who? Now?" Mark's confusion must have bled through the channel, because Cecil added voice harder. "He's not talking about ships. He's talking about leverage. Move." The combatant turned his attention toward the nearest Viltrumite squad. 4 soldiers hovering in loose formation, clearly waiting for Thrag's orders. They saw him looking. One raised a fist, another grinned. He took one step forward, The lead Viltrumite exploded backward ribs, caving inward body tumbling through space in a spray of crimson mist. The second tried to dodge and folded in half around an invisible impact. The third managed to scream before his jaw dislocated. The fourth didn't move at all. Just hung there, suspended, every bone in his right arm shattered into splinters. Mark didn't see the attacks land, didn't see him move. He only saw aftermath. The man stopped walking, stood still again. Pressure radiated outward, and this time Mark felt it properly, a weight pressing down on his chest, his shoulders, his spine. Not crushing, just there, undeniable. Thrag began moving, not retreating, repositioning. His eyes never left the combatant, but his trajectory shifted toward a cluster of Viltrumites regrouping near a half-destroyed coalition frigate. Smart. Creating angles, testing responses. The figure tracked him, didn't follow, just watched. Alan's voice cut through the comms, sharp and incredulous. "What the hell is that thing?" Tech Jacket responded, first voice layered with scanning data. "No idea. Readings are... I don't even know what I'm looking at. He's not Viltrumite, not Thraxan, not anything in the database." "Is he Coalition?" Mark asked. Silence. Cecil's voice returned colder now. "No, he's not one of ours." Mark stared at the man in red and black, at the calm, empty eyes, at the bodies drifting past him like shrapnel. "Then whose side is he on?" Nobody answered. He turned his head slightly, as if he'd heard the question. His gaze settled on Mark for the first time, brief, assessing, dismissive. Then he looked away. Thrag raised one hand. A signal. The remaining Viltrumites scattered. Not fleeing. Reorganizing. Moving toward choke points, toward cover, toward angles of attack that kept the intruder in overlapping fields of fire. Thrag wasn't testing anymore. He was building a trap. The combatant exhaled once. Mark didn't hear it, couldn't in vacuum, but he saw the shift in posture. Saw the decision settle. And then he moved. Not fast by Viltrumite standards. Not a blur. Just direct. He crossed 30 meters in a heartbeat and intercepted a Viltrumite mid-charge. Grabbed the soldier by the shoulder, slammed him into the nearest hull hard enough to cave in the plating. The Viltrumite's spine bent at an angle spines didn't bend. Blood seeped through the cracks in his armor. He let go. The body tumbled. Another Viltrumite dove in from above. The man didn't look up. Didn't block. Just shifted his weight, and the attacker's trajectory warped, bent sideways, like he'd hit a gravitic lens. He spun past limbs flailing and crashed into a cargo container hard enough to split it open. Mark's hands clenched. "We have to..." Nolan grabbed his arm. "No. Dad, he's killing Viltrumites." "Yes." Nolan's voice was flat, hard. "And if you get between him and them, he'll go through you." "How do you know?" Nolan didn't answer. He just stared at the figure, and for the first time in months, Mark saw something like fear in his father's eyes. The combatant stopped moving again. He stood amid the carnage suit, unmarked, breathing steady. Around him, 7 Viltrumites hung unconscious or dead. Thrag hovered 200 meters out, watching, calculating. His trap hadn't sprung. It had collapsed before it could form. Cecil's voice crackled back in. "All coalition forces fall back to defensive perimeter. Do not engage the unidentified combatant. Repeat, do not engage." "What about the civilians?" Mark asked. He said, "There are no civilians here, Mark. He knows that. He's giving us an order." "An order? Move, or he moves us." Mark looked back at the man. At the way he stood motionless, patient, waiting. Like the war was an inconvenience. Like the fleets and the soldiers and the blood were just noise. And then Mark understood. This wasn't a rescue. This wasn't reinforcements. This was something else stepping onto the board. Something that didn't care about sides or treaties or justifications. He turned his head once more, gaze sweeping across the battlefield. His eyes found Mark again, held for half a second, then moved on. Mark felt cold. Thrag began pulling his forces back, slowly, methodically, keeping formations tight, keeping escape routes open. The coalition fleets mirrored the movement crews scrambling to reposition. Nobody fired, nobody spoke. The figure stood alone in the center of it all, surrounded by remains and bodies, and waited. Mark whispered into the comm, "What does he want?" Nobody answered, because nobody knew. This entrance is absolutely crazy. Thetis is gone just like that, and honestly, the way Thrag handled it was brutal. But you know what I'm more shocked is this new guy, Jiren, showing up through a crack in reality. He doesn't have a portal or a ship, he just walks in like he owns the place. Personally, I think that he's not even trying to look scary. But everyone, even Thrag, feels that massive pressure. It feels like the power scale just broke. What do you guys think? Is this guy a hidden hero or just a much bigger problem for Mark and his team? Well, maybe we find out in the next chapter. Cecil Stedman didn't trust things he couldn't categorize. The feed from the flagship's bridge showed the battlefield in real time. Debris fields, damaged vessels, bodies spinning through vacuum, and at the center, motionless, the figure in red and black. "Still no ID?" Cecil asked. Tech Jacket's voice came through, strained. "Nothing. He's not emitting any recognizable energy signature. Physiology reads wrong. Like the scanners don't know what they're looking at. Wrong how? Like he's denser than he should be. Mass doesn't match volume. Gravity wells around him fluctuate without correlation to movement." Cecil watched the screen. The figure hadn't shifted position in 3 minutes. Just standing there, waiting. "Options?" Cecil asked. Robot's voice clicked in. "Insufficient data. Unknown variables. Unknown allegiance. Unknown." I don't need a list of what we don't know. I need solutions. Silence. Cecil exhaled through his teeth. "Get me Mark." "Atan." Mark drifted near the coalition perimeter, eyes locked on the motionless combatant. His hands kept clenching, unclenching. Every instinct told him to do something, anything. But his father's words echoed in his skull. "He'll go through you." Alan pulled up beside him. "You okay?" "No." "Yeah, me neither." They watched another Viltrumite attempt an approach, slow testing, hands raised. The figure's head turned fractionally. The Viltrumite stopped, backed away. "He's not attacking," Mark said. "Not right now." "Then what's he waiting for?" Alan didn't answer. Cecil's voice crackled through Mark's comm. "Mark, I need you to establish contact." Mark blinked. "What?" "Get close. Talk to him. Figure out what he wants." "Dad said..." "I know what your father said. I'm telling you to try anyway." Mark's jaw tightened. "And if he decides I'm in his way, then you move very quickly." The line went dead. Mark looked at Alan. The Unopan shrugged. "Your call." "Yeah?" Mark inhaled. "Stay back." He pushed forward. Slowly. Hands visible. No sudden moves. 50 meters, 40, 30. The figure's eyes tracked him. Didn't shift posture, didn't tense, just observed. 20 meters. Mark stopped, swallowed. "Hey, we're not your enemy. If you're here to help, we can..." The figure spoke. One word. "No." Mark froze. "No." "You misunderstand." The voice was flat, precise, no emotion, no inflection. "I'm not here to help." Mark's throat went dry. "Then why?" "This ends. You move, or I move you." The figure's gaze shifted past Mark, scanning the coalition forces regrouping behind him, then back to Mark. "Choose quickly." Mark felt cold spread through his chest. Not a threat, a fact. He backed away. Slowly. Kept his eyes forward until he rejoined Alan. "Well?" Alan asked. Mark shook his head. "He's not with us." "Then who?" "Nobody." "Come aside, but us aside." Thrag watched from 200 meters out, flanked by his remaining commanders. The Grand Regent's expression hadn't changed since the intruder appeared. No anger, no concern, just calculation. Analysis, Thrag said. Lucan, one of his lieutenants, spoke carefully. Enormous threat. Unknown capabilities. Minimal observable effort required to neutralize our soldiers. Weaknesses. None detected. Behavioral patterns. Lucan hesitated. Reactive. Defensive positioning. Establishes zones of control but doesn't pursue beyond them. Thrag's eyes narrowed. He's setting boundaries. Yes, Grand Regent. Then we test where those boundaries are. Lucan's jaw tightened. Grand Regent, the casualties are acceptable. Thrag turned to face his lieutenant directly. We don't win by retreating. We win by learning what makes him move. He gestured toward a cluster of wounded Viltrumites drifting near a damaged cruiser. 3 soldiers injured, but conscious. Survivors from the first exchange. Kill them! Lucan stiffened. Sir, they're liabilities. Eliminate them. I want to see if he intervenes. Grand Regent. Now. Lucan's face went blank. He signaled 2 other Viltrumites. They moved toward the wounded soldiers. Mark saw it happen through his helmet display. 3 Viltrumites injured trying to stabilize themselves against a drifting hull section. 2 healthy soldiers approaching. Fast. No, Mark breathed. The first wounded Viltrumite looked up, saw them coming. Tried to raise a hand. The healthy soldier's fist went through his chest. Mark's stomach lurched. They're killing their own. The second wounded soldier tried to flee. Didn't make it 3 meters before his skull caved inward. The third started screaming. The coalition channels picked it up raw, desperate, terrified. Then silence. Mark turned toward the figure in red and black. Do something. The combatant didn't move, just watched. The healthy Viltrumites finished their work. Bodies tumbled away, leaking blood into vacuum. They regrouped with Thrag's position. Mark's hands shook. He just let them die. Nolan's voice came through quiet. He's not a guardian, Mark. Then what is he? Something worse. Cecil's voice cut through every coalition channel. All forces hold position. Do not engage Viltrumite targets. Do not approach the unidentified combatant. Maintain defensive perimeter only. Robot's voice followed. Clarification, we are now spectators. We're not strong enough to be anything else. On the bridge, Tech Jacket pulled up thermal imaging. Energy distribution maps. Gravitational distortion readings. Nothing made sense. He's not generating heat, Tech Jacket muttered. Not radiating energy. He's just there, like a hole in the data. Cecil stared at the screen, at the figure standing alone, at the way entire battle formations bent around him like water around stone. What are you? Cecil whispered. The figure's head turned. Fractionally, as if he'd heard. Cecil's blood went cold. Thrag watched the intruder's reaction, or lack thereof. No intervention, no response, just observation. Interesting. He has rules, Thrag said. Lucan glanced at him. Grand Regent. He's constrained by something, otherwise we'd already be dead. Thrag's lips curved slightly. That means he can be manipulated. How? Thrag gestured toward the coalition fleets. He told them to move. They obeyed. That suggests he values order over annihilation. You intend to leverage that? I intend to make him choose between his principles and his objectives. Thrag's eyes gleamed. And when he hesitates, we strike. Mark couldn't stop replaying it. The wounded Viltrumites, the executions, the figure watching and doing nothing. Why didn't he help them? Mark asked. Nolan was quiet for a long moment. Because they weren't his mission. What mission? He won't even tell us what he wants. He already did. We're just not listening. Mark turned to face his father. Then translate. Nolan met his eyes. He wants the war to stop. Not because it's wrong, because it's inefficient. That's insane. That's justice without mercy. Mark's chest tightened. So what do? We stay out of his way. And we hope Thrag is smart enough to do the same. And if he's not, Nolan's expression went dark. Then we find out what happens when that thing stops being patient. The figure shifted. First movement in minutes. Every sensor locked onto him. Every eye tracked his trajectory. He moved toward the largest concentration of Viltrumite forces, 20 soldiers in tight formation, positioned near the remains of a coalition destroyer. Not fast, not slow, just direct. The Viltrumites saw him coming, braced, prepared. He reached them and stopped, stood 3 meters away, arms at his sides. One Viltrumite snarled, launched forward. The figure's hand moved, barely, just enough. The Viltrumite's momentum reversed. He shot backward, spine-bending armor cracking, slammed into 2 others. All 3 went spinning into the dark. The remaining 17 didn't move. The figure spoke, voice cutting through the silence. "Leave." They looked at each other. Looked at their comrades drifting unconscious. Looked at the thing standing in front of them. They left. The figure watched them go. Then returned to his original position. Stood. Waited. Cecil leaned back in his chair. "He's hurting them." "Confirmed, Chakwan," Robot said. "Viltrumite positions are consolidating away from coalition assets. He's creating a buffer zone. Without killing them. Without unnecessary killing," Robot corrected. "He's eliminated resistance, not the resistant." Tech Jacket pulled up a tactical overlay. "If he keeps this up, he'll have both forces separated within the hour." Cecil's jaw tightened. And then what? Nobody answered, because nobody knew. Mark watched the figure return to stillness. Watched the battlefield slowly, painfully, reorganize itself around his presence. "This is wrong," Mark said. Alan glanced at him. "What is all of it? He shows up. People die. The war just bends. And we don't even know his name. Does it matter?" "Yes." Mark's voice cracked slightly. "If he's going to change everything, we should at least know who he is." The figure's head turned. Looked directly at Mark again. And for just a moment, Mark thought he saw something in those flat black eyes. Not recognition. Evaluation. Then the gaze moved on. Mark felt himself shaking. Not from fear. From the horrible, creeping realization that whatever this thing was, it wasn't here to save anyone. It was here to end something. And Mark had no idea what. The battlefield had gone quiet. Not peaceful, just waiting. Coalition forces held position 3 kilometers out, scattered across defensive formations that hadn't moved in 20 minutes. Viltrumite squads drifted in loose clusters, maintaining distance from both the coalition and the solitary combatant who'd forced this stalemate. Jiren hadn't shifted in half an hour. Mark's hands ached from clenching. He'd been staring at that red and black suit for so long, his vision had started tunneling. Beside him, Oliver breathed steadily through the comm, but Mark could hear the strain underneath. "How long are we supposed to just float here?" Oliver asked. Nobody answered. Cecil's voice crackled through. "Mark, your father wants to talk. Private channel." Mark switched frequencies. "Dad," Nolan's voice came through low. "When this breaks, you stay back." "When what breaks?" "Thrag's not done. He's repositioning." Mark pulled up his tactical display. Viltrumite positions had shifted subtly over the last 10 minutes, tightening formations, angling trajectories toward specific points in space. "He's setting something up," Mark said. "He's testing boundaries." Nolan's tone went colder. "And when he finds one, people die." "Then we stop him." "We can't. Not without crossing into that thing's engagement zone." Mark looked at Jiren, still motionless, still waiting. "What is he waiting for?" Nolan was quiet for 3 seconds. "Permission or provocation? I don't know which is worse." Thrag hung at the center of his command cluster. 8 lieutenants positioned in a loose sphere around him. His eyes tracked every coalition vessel, every damaged hull section, every potential leverage point. Lucan spoke carefully. "Grand Regent, our scouts report the coalition medical frigate is attempting to extract wounded from Sector 7. "How many wounded?" "Approximately 40. Mixed coalition personnel. Some Viltrumite prisoners." Thrag's expression didn't change. "The intruder's position, equidistant between Sector 7 and our primary formation. Reaction time if we move on the frigate." Lucan hesitated. "Unknown. He's shown no interest in medical operations." "Then we find out." Thrag gestured to 3 of his fastest soldiers. Kill the frigate. Prioritize visible casualties. Make it loud. One of the soldiers, a younger Viltrumite named Craig, stiffened. Grand Regent, the prisoners. Our liabilities. Thrag's voice dropped. Execute the order. Craig's jaw worked. Then he nodded. Signaled the others. They broke formation. Mark saw them move. 3 Viltrumites accelerating hard toward the medical frigate. Not flanking, not maneuvering, just direct. No, Mark breathed. Cecil, they're going for the wounded. I see it. All units hold position. They're going to massacre. Hold position. Mark's vision blurred red. His fists clenched hard enough that his gloves creaked. The Viltrumites closed on the frigate. One of them ripped through the hull plating like tissue. Atmosphere vented. Bodies tumbled out, medical staff, wounded soldiers, prisoners still restrained. Mark kicked forward. I'm not watching this. Nolan's hand clamped around his wrist. Stop! Dad! Look! Jiren moved. Not fast, not slow, just inevitable. He crossed 2 kilometers in the span of a heartbeat. No acceleration curve, no build-up. One moment standing still, the next directly between the Viltrumites and the frigate. Craig saw him, tried to pivot, didn't make it. Jiren's hand closed around Craig's throat, lifted him. And with a motion so economical it barely registered twisted, the snap echoed across every frequency. Craig's body went limp. Jiren released him. The corpse drifted. The second Viltrumite lunged from the side. Jiren didn't turn. His other hand moved palm strike, precise, devastating. The Viltrumite's sternum caved inward, ribs punctured organs. Blood sprayed in a fan pattern across the void. The third Viltrumite tried to flee. Jiren caught him by the ankle. Pulled. Slammed him into the frigate's hull once, twice, 3 times. Each impact left a deeper crater. By the third, the Viltrumite stopped twitching. Jiren let go. 3 bodies. 3 seconds. Mark couldn't breathe. Jiren turned toward the frigate. Survivors still tumbled from the breach, wounded, dying, vacuum exposed. He raised one hand. Pressure bloomed outward, invisible but undeniable. The tumbling bodies slowed, stabilized, began drifting back toward the frigate's intact sections. He was hurting them, gently, efficiently. Then he turned away. Returned to his original position, stood, waited. Mark's hands shook. He just killed them. Yes, Nolan said, and then saved the wounded. Yes? I don't understand. Nolan's voice went flat. He's not here to end the war. He's here to decide who's allowed to survive it. Us. Cecil watched the feed 3 times. Rewound, analyzed, rewound again. Tech jacket, casualty assessment. 3 Viltrumite KIA. Frigate structural integrity compromised but holding. Wounded personnel recovered. 0 additional casualties from the hull breach. He controlled the decompression, Robot said. Directed escaping atmosphere to slow body trajectories. Calculated rescue velocities in real time. Cecil leaned back. So he can be precise? Extremely. Then why the brutality? Nobody answered. Cecil pulled up a tactical overlay. Drew lines between Jiren's position, the frigate, and Thrag's formation. The geometry was deliberate. Jiren had positioned himself exactly where he could intercept threats to the wounded while maintaining line of sight on Viltrumite command. He's not guarding the frigate, Cecil muttered. He's marking it. Clarification, Robot asked. He's declaring it off limits. Anyone who crosses that line dies. Cecil's jaw tightened. He's not participating in this war. He's redrawing its boundaries. Thrag observed the bodies drifting past his position. Craig. 2 others. All dead in seconds. Lucan's voice came through strained. Orders, Grand Regent. Thrag was quiet for 10 seconds. He has defined his priorities. Medical assets are protected. Combat assets are not. Meaning we can't use wounded as bait, but we can use combatants. Thrag gestured toward a nearby debris field. Collapse that destroyer hull. Create a choke point. Force coalition forces to choose between breaking formation or abandoning their perimeter. And if the intruder intervenes, then we learn his limits. Thrag's eyes narrowed. He can't be everywhere. And if he tries, he'll expose vulnerabilities we can exploit. Mark couldn't stop replaying it. The snap, the spray of blood, the casual efficiency. He didn't hesitate, Mark said. Alan drifted nearby, unusually quiet. No, didn't warn them. Didn't give them a chance to surrender. They weren't going to surrender. How do you know? Alan looked at him. Because I've fought Viltrumites. They don't surrender until after you break them. Mark's chest felt tight. So that makes it okay. I didn't say that. Then what are you saying? Alan exhaled. I'm saying, I don't know. I've never seen anything like this. Oliver's voice cut in. Mark, Dad's signaling. We're pulling back. Why? Because Thrag's moving again. Mark pulled up his display. Viltrumite formations were shifting, not attacking, but repositioning. Creating pressure points, testing angles. And at the center of it all, Jiren stood motionless. A fixed point around which the war bent and flexed and tried to find purchase. Mark whispered, This isn't going to end, is it? Nobody answered. The destroyer hull collapsed 20 minutes later. Structural failure. Controlled demolition. Mark didn't know which and didn't care. All he knew was that a massive section of debris began tumbling toward coalition lines, shedding fragments like shrapnel. If it hit, dozens of ships would be compromised, hundreds of crew. Evasive maneuvers. Cecil's voice cut through every channel. All vessels scatter pattern delta. Jiren moved. He crossed the distance in a blur. Positioned himself directly in the debris path. Raised both hands. The tumbling wreckage slowed. Stopped. Hung in space like it had hit an invisible wall. Jiren's arms trembled, not much. Just enough to be visible. He was holding it. All of it. Thousands of tons of twisted metal and shattered hull plating. Coalition ships scattered beneath the floating debris, repositioned, cleared the impact zone. Jiren stood, arms extended, expression unchanged. 30 seconds, a minute, 2, then he lowered his hands. The debris resumed its tumble, but now angled away from coalition positions, drifting harmlessly into empty space. Jiren exhaled once, returned to position. Mark stared. How much can he? Don't finish that question. Nolan interrupted. You don't want the answer. Thrag watched the debris field clear. Watched the coalition regroup. Watched Jiren return to stillness. He'll protect non-combatants, Thrag said. He'll prevent large-scale casualties, but he won't pursue. Grand Regent. He's establishing rules of engagement. Acceptable casualties versus unacceptable. Thrag's lips curved slightly. We can work within those rules. How? Small strikes, precision targets. Nothing that triggers mass casualty protocols. Thrag gestured to his remaining commanders. Divide our forces. Attack from multiple vectors simultaneously. Make him choose which threat to address first. Lucan's voice dropped. And the ones he doesn't address. Complete their objectives. Mark felt sick. He'd watched Jiren kill 3 Viltrumites without hesitation. Watched him save dozens of wounded without emotion. Watched him stop a catastrophe with the same blank expression he'd worn since arriving. He's not human, Mark said. Nolan glanced at him. No, I don't mean literally, I mean... Mark struggled for words. He doesn't care about any of this. The people, the war, the reasons, none of it matters to him. It matters, Nolan said quietly. Just not the way you think. Then how? Nolan was quiet for a long moment. You remember when you first got your powers, when you could finally see how fragile everyone was? Mark nodded. He sees everyone that way, all the time. Nolan's voice went colder. And he's decided which fragility matters. Mark's stomach dropped. That's not justice. No, Nolan agreed. It's something worse. The battlefield stretched silent around them. Jiren stood at its center, unmoved, unmoving. And Mark realized the war hadn't stopped. It had just learned to happen around him. Jiren is officially the scariest guy in the room now. He's not a hero in the way Mark wants him to be. He saved that medical ship, sure. But did you see how fast he took out those Viltrumites? It was like he was just cleaning up a mess. It's super interesting to me because he doesn't seem to care about who is good or bad. He just cares about his own rules. He's like a cosmic referee who will bench you permanently if you play dirty. I really wonder if a protector should be this cold, or is Jiren going too far? Let's see if Thrag has a backup plan in the next part. The truce lasted 6 hours, not peace. Just exhaustion pretending to be discipline. Coalition forces maintained their perimeter. Viltrumites held their formations. And between them, Jiren stood unchanged, a monument to patience that nobody trusted. Cecil hadn't slept, hadn't left the command bridge. He stared at the tactical display where Jiren's markers sat like a tumor in the middle of their projections. Status, Cecil asked. Tech Jacket didn't look up from his screens. No change. He's still there. Still waiting. Viltrumite movements. Minimal. They're redistributing forces. Nothing aggressive. Just... Tech Jacket paused. Reorganizing. For what? Nobody answered. Robot's voice cut through. Analysis suggests Thrag is implementing a dispersal doctrine. Small units, multiple vectors, testing response protocols. Cecil's jaw tightened. He's learning. Affirmative. How long until he finds a gap? Robot was quiet for 3 seconds. Unknown. But probability increases with each passing hour. Cecil leaned forward. Get me Nolan. Nolan floated near Mark, and all of her eyes locked on a distant point where Viltrumite formations had begun shifting. Small movements, incremental adjustments, but deliberate. Dad... Mark's transmission came through strained. What are they doing? Testing perimeters. Nolan's tone dropped. Looking for patterns in his responses. Whose responses? His. Nolan gestured toward Jiren. Thrag wants to know what triggers intervention, what doesn't. Where the boundaries are. Oliver spoke up. And once he knows, then he operates inside them. Mark felt cold spread through his chest. So Jiren's not stopping the war. He's just shaping it. Yes, that's insane. Nolan turned to face him. That's justice without context, without mercy, without compromise. His expression went dark. And Thrag's going to weaponize it. Cecil crackled in over the channel. Nolan, we need to talk. Go ahead. Not over open channels. Flag back to command. Nolan exchanged a glance with Mark. Stay here. Don't engage anything. Understand? Mark nodded. Nolan kicked off toward the flagship. Thrag assembled his corps commanders in a tight cluster 2 kilometers from Jiren's last known coordinates. 8 Viltrumites. His most experienced. His most ruthless. Report, Thrag said. Lucan spoke first. He responds to mass casualty events, medical assets, civilian-adjacent targets. Anything that threatens non-combatants triggers immediate intervention. And combat losses, variable. Single deaths ignored. Small unit engagements observed but not interdicted. Large-scale formation clashes. Lucan hesitated. Unknown. We haven't tested that threshold. Then we test it now. Thrag gestured toward a section of space where coalition escort vessels maintained picket duty. That destroyer group, 4 ships. Crew complement approximately 600 total. Grand Regent, that's not a medical target, not civilian, not protected under his demonstrated rules of engagement. Thrag's eyes narrowed. Hit them hard, fast. See if he intervenes. Another commander, Anissa, spoke carefully. And if he does, then we know large-scale military action triggers response. If he doesn't, Thrag's lips curved slightly. Then we have room to maneuver. At what cost? Acceptable. Thrag signaled 3 heavy assault teams. Execute in 2 minutes. Simultaneous strike from multiple vectors. I want those vessels disabled or destroyed before coalition reinforcements can respond. Lucan's jaw worked. Acknowledged. The teams broke formation, accelerated into attack positions. Mark saw them first. 12 Viltrumites, moving fast, angled toward the warship group on Coalition's left flank. Contact, Mark shouted into the comm. Viltrumite assault formation inbound on Sector 4. All units scramble, Cecil barked through the channel. Capital ships fall back. Too slow. The Viltrumites hit like hammers. 3 of them punched through the lead vessel's bridge. Crew didn't have time to scream. 2 more ripped into the engine section. Reactors went critical. The ship split apart, shedding atmosphere and bodies in a spray of debris. Mark kicked forward. I'm engaging. Negative. Cecil's reply cracked sharp. You are not authorized. Mark ignored him, accelerated hard. Alan and Oliver followed. They crossed a kilometer in seconds. 2 kilometers. The Viltrumites were already moving to the next target. Another warship. More losses. More. Jiren appeared between them and the second vessel, not moving. Just there, like he'd always been there. The Viltrumites pulled up short, weapons raised, ready. Jiren didn't acknowledge them. His gaze swept across the burning remains of the first ship. Bodies spinning in vacuum. Escape pods tumbling away. Survivors clawing at nothing. Mark hung 20 meters back, breathing hard. Do something. Jiren's head turned fractionally, looked at Mark, then back to the Viltrumites. He didn't move. The Viltrumites waited. 3 seconds. 5. 10. Then one of them, a massive soldier with scars across his face, grinned. He's not stopping us. They dove toward the second cruiser. Jiren let them pass. Mark's vision blurred red. What are you doing? The Viltrumites hit the warship, punched through hull plating, grabbed crew members and threw them into space, ripped apart support structures. The vessel began breaking apart. Mark lunged forward. Alan grabbed his shoulder. Don't, Alan said. They're murdering military targets, not civilians, not wounded. Alan's tone went hollow. He's not going to stop them. Mark stared at Jiren, at those flat black eyes, at the complete absence of reaction. Why? Jiren spoke. 1 sentence. No emotion. The threshold was not crossed. Mark felt something break inside his chest. Listen. Nolan reached the command bridge as the second ship died. Cecil stood, rigid fists clenched white, staring at screens full of death tolls. 643, Cecil said quietly. First capital ship. Second vessel losing atmosphere. Estimate 400 more dead before complete structural failure. Where is he? Nolan asked. Watching. Cecil's reply cracked. Just watching. Nolan pulled up the tactical feed. Saw Jiren's marker. Saw Mark's marker nearby. Saw the Viltrumites moving toward a third target. He's not going to intervene, Nolan said. They're slaughtering combatants, military vessels, crews that signed up for this. Nolan's jaw tightened. In his logic, this is acceptable loss. Cecil turned to face him. And you agree with that? No. Nolan's expression went cold. But I understand it. He's not here to minimize body counts. He's here to prevent specific types of killing. Everything else, he gestured at the screens. Everything else is just war. That's monstrous. That's consistency. Robot's channel opened. Coalition Second Fleet requesting permission to engage Viltrumite assault teams. Cecil didn't hesitate. Granted. All available forces converge on Sector 4. Stop them. Acknowledged. Nolan grabbed Cecil's arm. You're making a mistake. I'm protecting my people. You're escalating into his engagement zone. If Coalition forces swarm that sector, if it becomes mass combat, then maybe he'll do something. Nolan's grip tightened. Or maybe he won't. And then you've just committed forces to a meat grinder for nothing. Cecil pulled free. Then what do you suggest? Pull back. Accept the losses. Don't give Thrag an excuse to widen the conflict. Accept. Cecil dropped to a whisper. You want me to let 1,000 people die so we don't inconvenience him? Nolan met his eyes. I want you to survive. Because if Thrag pushes him far enough and he decides this entire theater is a threat, Nolan shook his head, then none of us survive. The third warship tried to run. Didn't matter. 4 Viltrumites caught it within 30 seconds. Ripped through propulsion systems. The vessel tumbled hemorrhaging crew through a dozen hull breaches. Coalition reinforcements arrived. 20 fighters, 6 frigates. They opened fire. The Viltrumites scattered. Not retreating, repositioning, using the dying ship as cover. Weapons fire lit up the void. Energy beams, kinetic rounds, missiles tracking heat signatures that kept shifting, evading, doubling back. Mark dove into the chaos. Found a Viltrumite hauling an unconscious crew member by the leg. Mark hit him from the side. They tumbled through debris, traded blows. The Viltrumite was faster, stronger. Mark took a fist to the ribs that cracked bone. Alan tackled the Viltrumite from behind. Oliver followed up with a strike to the spine. Together, they drove him off. The crew member drifted away, unconscious, maybe dead. Mark grabbed him, started pulling toward a rescue craft. His ribs screamed. Movement to his left. Another Viltrumite, coming fast. Mark braced. Couldn't dodge. Couldn't. The Viltrumite's head snapped sideways. Body went limp. Tumbled past Mark without collision. Mark looked up. Jiren stood 15 meters away, hands still extended from the strike. His gaze swept across Mark, the crew member, the burning wreckage. Then he lowered his arm, turned away. Mark's reply came out broken. Why him? Why this one? Jiren didn't answer, didn't look back, just returned to his original coordinates, stood, waited. The assault ended 12 minutes after it began. 3 capital ships. Total loss. Death toll exceeding 1,000. Viltrumite losses, 2 killed by coalition forces. 1 killed by Jiren when it threatened Mark directly. Thrag recalled his teams. They regrouped at his coordinates, bloodied but victorious. Lucan approached cautiously. Grand Regent, assessment? Thrag's expression hadn't changed. He permits military engagement. He intervenes only when specific parameters are violated. His eyes gleamed. We have operational freedom within those boundaries, at significant cost. Cost is temporary, intelligence is permanent. Thrag gestured toward the wreckage. Now we know, and knowing means we can push further. How much further? Thrag looked toward Earth's distant star. Until he's forced to choose between his principles and his objectives. And when he makes that choice, Thrag's tone dropped. We'll have him.
Off.
Mark drifted near the remains of the first vessel. Bodies everywhere. Crew, soldiers, people with names he'd never know. Nolan floated beside him, silent. He could have stopped this, Mark said. Maybe. He's strong enough, fast enough. He could have. He chose not to. Nolan carried no judgment, just fact. Then he's wrong. Is he? Mark turned to face his father. How can you? I'm not defending him. I'm asking you to think. Nolan gestured at the battlefield. If he stops, every engagement prevents, every death ends, every conflict before it starts. What happens? People live. People become dependent. Wars don't end. They pause. And when he leaves, because he will leave, everything collapses worse than before. Nolan's expression went dark. He's not here to save us, Mark. He's here to establish boundaries, to make us solve our own problems within limits he finds acceptable. That's not justice. No, Nolan agreed. It's something colder. They hung there, surrounded by death, by silence, by the distant figure who'd permitted it all. Mark whispered, I don't know if I can watch this anymore. Nolan's hand settled on his shoulder. Then don't look at him. Look at Thrag. Because he's the one who decided this was acceptable cost. And Jiren just let it happen. Yes. Nolan's grip tightened. And that's going to haunt you, I know. Because it's haunting me too. Cecil stood alone on the bridge. Death tolls scrolled across screens. Names, faces, service records. All gone. Tech jacket, Cecil said quietly. What's his status? Unchanged, back at original coordinates. No movement, no energy fluctuation. Emotional response. Unknown. Scanning doesn't detect kumites. Tech jacket stopped. He doesn't register emotions, sir, at all. Cecil's jaw worked. So he doesn't care. I don't know if he's capable of caring. Not the way we do. Cecil looked at Jiren's marker on the display. A single point. Unchanging. Unmoved. Then what are we supposed to do with him? Nobody answered. Because there was no answer. They'd asked for help, for intervention, for justice. And they'd gotten something that measured loss in thresholds instead of lives. The battlefield went quiet again. Not peaceful. Never peaceful. Just waiting for the next test, the next sacrifice. The next time someone crossed a line they didn't know existed until it was too late. Mark couldn't stop shaking. He'd been floating near the wreckage for 20 minutes. Bodies drifted past. Debris tumbled in slow arcs. And somewhere beyond the carnage, Jiren stood motionless, exactly where he'd been since the killing stopped. Oliver's transmission came through soft. Mark, we need to pull back. No. Mark, he let them die. Mark's reply cracked. 1,000 people. He just let it happen. Alan drifted closer. What were you expecting? I don't know. Something. Anything. Mark turned to face the distant red and black figure. He's strong enough to stop all of this. Why won't he? Because we're not his mission. Alan's tone went flat. We never were. Mark's fists clenched. Then what is? Nobody answered. Because nobody knew. Nolan reached Mark's coordinates 5 minutes later. His son hung rigid, staring at Jiren, with an expression Nolan recognized too well. Rage mixing with helplessness. Mark hung. Nolan said quietly. Come back to the flagship. Why? Mark didn't look at him. So we can watch more people die while he decides if they're worth saving. So you can live to make better choices than this one. Mark turned. His eyes were red. Better choices? Like what? Like standing aside, like accepting it, like surviving. Nolan's jaw tightened. You can't fight him. I'm not trying to fight him. Mark's hands trembled. I'm trying to stop him from being a coward. Nolan grabbed Mark's shoulder, hard. Listen to me very carefully. That thing is not a coward. It's a threshold. And if you cross it, then what? He kills me? Mark pulled free. At least that would be consistent. Mark. But his son was already moving. Toward Jiren. Nolan cursed. Kicked after him. Bungeons. Cecil saw it happening through the tactical feed. Mark's marker. Accelerating toward Jiren's position. Nolan following close behind. Tech jacket, Cecil snapped. Get me a channel to Mark. Now. He's not responding. Override his comm. Trying blocked. He shut us out. Cecil's knuckles went white. Then get me every available unit in that sector. I want a containment perimeter around both of them. Robot's channel opened. Clarification, you wish to contain Mark or Jiren? Both. Cecil leaned toward the screen. And if Jiren moves toward Mark, why want every weapon we have ready to fire? Those weapons will not stop him. I don't need them to stop him. I need him to know we tried. Mark crossed 200 meters before Jiren reacted. Just a slight turn of the head. Gaze settling on Mark, with the same flat assessment he'd given everything else. Mark slowed. Stopped 10 meters away. Close enough to see those black eyes. Close enough to feel the pressure radiating outward, like gravity had doubled. Why? Mark's question came out raw. Why did you let them die? Jiren didn't respond. They were people. They had families. They were combatants. Jiren's reply cut through the void. No amplification, no emotion, just fact. Engaged in military action, within acceptable parameters. Acceptable? Mark's chest heaved. To who? To the standard required. What standard? Mark's hands shook. Whose rules? Jiren's gaze didn't waver. Mine. Mark felt something snap inside. Then your rules are wrong. No, 1,000 people would have become 10,000 if conflict escalated. Jiren's expression remained unchanged. Or 100,000. Or planetary extinction. Containment requires boundaries. Boundaries require enforcement. That's not justice. Justice is not negotiable. Mark lunged forward, fist cocked, rage overriding everything else. He crossed 5 meters, then stopped, not by choice. Pressure locked around him like invisible hands. His muscles screamed, his flight path bent sideways. He hung there, suspended, unable to move forward or back. Jiren hadn't raised a hand, hadn't shifted position, just looked at Mark with that same empty assessment. Stand aside, Jiren said, or be removed. Mark struggled, pushed against the invisible barrier with everything he had. His suit creaked, his bones ached. Nothing moved. I won't, Mark gasped. I won't let you. You have no authority here. Neither do you. I have capacity. Jiren's tone didn't change. Capacity decides. Nolan arrived. Saw Mark suspended. Saw Jiren's expression. And understood immediately. Let him go, Nolan said carefully. Jiren's gaze shifted. He attacked. He's grieving. Irrelevant. He's my son. Jiren was quiet for 2 seconds. Then remove him. The pressure released. Mark tumbled forward, gasping. Nolan caught him before he spun out of control. Mark, Nolan said quietly, we're leaving. No. Mark pushed against his father. He doesn't get to. Yes, he does. Nolan's grip tightened. Because we can't stop him. And if we try, he'll go through us like tissue. Then we die trying, and accomplish nothing. Nolan pulled Mark closer, spoke directly into his helmet comm. Your mother needs you alive. Earth needs you alive. I need you alive. This, he gestured toward Jiren, this doesn't matter. It matters to them. Mark's reply broke. To the people he let die, they're already dead. You're not. Nolan started pulling him back. And that's the only thing that matters right now. Mark struggled. But his father's grip was iron. They drifted away slowly. 20 meters, 50, 100. Jiren watched them go, then returned his attention to the battlefield, as if they'd never been there at all. Nah. Thrag observed the exchange from a kilometer out. Every word, every movement, every reaction. Lucan hovered beside him. The young one tried to attack, and failed. Thrag's eyes gleamed. But more importantly, he cared enough to try, meaning the intruder has a weakness. Thrag gestured toward Mark's retreating form. He'll protect the boy, not because he cares, but because inconsistency undermines authority. You intend to exploit that. I intend to make him choose. Thrag's expression didn't change. Between maintaining his rules and protecting someone who violated them. When that choice comes, he paused. We'll see how absolute his justice really is. Anissa spoke up. And if he chooses the boy, then we know sentimentality can be leveraged. Thrag turned to face his commanders. And if he doesn't? He left the sentence unfinished, but they all understood. Kurasai, Savi Janhatu. Mark reached the coalition perimeter, shaking. Nolan released him, but stayed close. He's a monster, Mark whispered. No. Nolan's reply came flat. He's something worse. He's consistent. That doesn't make it right. I didn't say it did. Mark looked at his father. Then why did you stop me? Because dying to prove a point is easy. Nolan's expression went dark. Living with what you can't change is harder. And you need to live, Mark. for everyone who can't. So I just accept it. You survive it. You learn from it. And you make sure Earth never becomes dependent on something like him. Nolan's jaw tightened. Because the moment we need him is the moment we've lost. Oliver drifted up. Dad, Coalition's pulling back. Cecil wants all forces at minimum safe distance. How far is safe? Mark asked bitterly. Unknown, Oliver said. But Cecil's trying to establish protocols, rules of engagement that don't cross his thresholds. So we're negotiating with him now. No. Nolan shook his head. We're learning where the fences are, so we know what happens if we climb them. Cecil stood on the bridge surrounded by screens full of data. Tactical overlays, energy readings, behavioral analysis. All of it trying to answer one question. What is he? Report, Cecil said. Tech Jacket pulled up a compilation. Estimated force output based on observed interventions, capable of stopping capital ship debris fields. Reaction time effectively instantaneous within engagement radius. Durability unknown. He hasn't been hit by anything significant. Psychological profile non-existent. He doesn't read as human psychology. No fear response, no aggression response, no anything. Robot's channel opened. He operates purely on pre-established parameters. Stimulus response without emotional intermediation. So he's a machine, Cecil said. No, machines can be reprogrammed. Robot paused. He cannot. Cecil leaned back, closed his eyes. Then what do? We adapt. Robot's reply came without hesitation. We structure operations to remain below his intervention thresholds. We accept that certain actions will trigger response. We plan accordingly. You're saying we work around him. I'm saying we survive him until he leaves or until something changes. Cecil opened his eyes, stared at Jiren's marker on the display. And if nothing changes? Nobody answered. Mark floated in the medical bay ribs, wrapped, breathing shallow. The doctors had cleared him. No permanent damage. Just bruises and cracks that would heal. Physical injuries always did. Alan sat nearby. You okay? No. Yeah, me neither. They were quiet for a long moment. I thought, Mark started, stopped. I thought if I stood up to him, maybe he'd see that what he's doing is wrong. And he didn't care. Mark's hands clenched. It didn't matter to him at all. The people who died. The people who'll die. None of it matters. Maybe it does, Alan said quietly. Just not the way we need it to. Mark looked at him. He's trying to stop something bigger, Alan continued. Something we're not seeing. And from his perspective, 1,000 lives now prevents 1,000,000 later. That's not his choice to make. No, Alan agreed. But he made it anyway. And we can't unmake it. Mark's chest felt tight. So what do? We keep fighting. Alan's antennae drooped. Just not him. Because he's not the war. He's the weather. You don't fight weather. You survive it. Nolan found Cecil in the command center an hour later. We need to talk, Nolan said. Cecil didn't turn from the screens. About what? About what happens when Thrag figures out how to use Mark as bait. Cecil's shoulders stiffened. Explain. Jiren protected Mark when a Viltrumite attacked him directly. Small intervention. Surgical. But it proved something. Nolan leaned against a console. He'll break his own rules if the alternative is watching someone cross a threshold right in front of him. You think Thrag noticed? I know he did. Thrag notices everything. Nolan's expression went cold. And the next time there's an attack, he's going to make sure Mark's close enough that Jiren has to choose between his rules and his consistency. Cecil turned. What do you suggest? Get Mark off the board. Send him back to Earth. Keep him away from this until it's over. He won't go. Make him. I can't. Cecil's jaw tightened. He's not under military command. And even if he was, we need him here. We need every fighter we have. Then you're gambling his life. I'm gambling all our lives. Cecil met Nolan's eyes. And hoping that thing out there keeps pretending to care about boundaries long enough for us to find a way out of this. Nolan was quiet for a long moment. There is no way out. Not while both of them are here. Them, Jiren and Thrag. Nolan pushed off the console. One won't stop testing, the other won't stop enforcing. And eventually, he shook his head. Eventually, something breaks. And when it does, the casualties won't be measured in thousands anymore. Then what do we do? Nolan looked out at the battlefield, at the distant figure still standing alone. We hope he chooses to end it before Thrag forces him to. And if he doesn't, Nolan's expression went hollow. Then we pray we're far enough away when it happens. And Jiren stood among the wreckage. Bodies floated past. Debris drifted in slow patterns. The war had paused again. Not ended, just waiting. He'd been challenged, confronted, accused. None of it changed anything. The parameters remained. The boundaries held. Justice required consistency, and consistency required discipline. Personal attachment, emotional appeals, grief. All of it was noise against the fundamental equation. Containment prevents escalation. Escalation causes extinction, therefore containment must be maintained. Simple, absolute, and he would enforce it. No matter who stood in his way. The void stretched silent around him. Behind coalition forces regrouped. Ahead, Viltrumite formations shifted into new configurations. And somewhere between them, a boy who tried to fight him drifted in a medical bay, learning the hardest lesson war had to teach. That being right doesn't matter if you're not strong enough to enforce it. Jiren turned his attention back to Thrag's position. The Grand Regent hadn't moved since the confrontation. Just watched. Calculated. Planned. They both knew what came next. The testing would escalate. The boundaries would be pushed. And sooner or later someone would cross a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Jiren would be ready. He was always ready. That confrontation between Mark and Jiren was so hard to watch. Mark is all about heart and saving everyone. But Jiren just shut him down with that capacity to sideline. It's basically saying, might makes right, which is exactly what the Viltrumites believe. It's also wild to see Nolan the Omni-Man himself actually looking scared. He knows they are basically ants compared to this guy. It makes you wonder, is it better to have a monster on your side if it stops the war, or is the cost too high? What's your opinion on Jiren's justice? Please drop your thoughts in the comment below. The attack came from 8 directions at once. Thrag had spent 2 hours repositioning his forces. Small adjustments, incremental shifts, nothing that triggered alarms, nothing that crossed thresholds, until everything moved simultaneously. 12 Viltrumites dove toward the medical frigate. 8 more targeted coalition supply vessels. 6 angled toward a cluster of damaged ships where crew still worked rescue operations. And 4, the fastest, the most experienced, shot directly toward the sector where Invincible and his brother held perimeter duty. Cecil saw it unfold across every screen. All units. Too late. The Viltrumites hit before anyone could scramble. The young Viltrumite barely had time to register movement before the first attacker slammed into him from above. Ribs cracked. Air left his lungs. He tumbled backward, vision blurring. Oliver shouted something. The comm crackled with overlapping warnings. Then a second Viltrumite caught him by the throat, spun, hurled him toward a debris field. He hit a hull section spine first, metal crumpled. His back screamed. He tried to push off, tried to orient, but hands grabbed his arms and wrenched them backward. Got him, someone shouted. Not through comm. Just raw voice in vacuum heard only because the Viltrumite's helmet was inches from his. Invincible struggled. Kicked. His boot connected with something soft. The grip loosened fractionally. Not enough. They were dragging him away from the perimeter. Away from help. Toward, he didn't know where. Didn't care. He twisted, threw his weight sideways, felt something tear in his shoulder. Oliver, meh. He gasped into the calm. Dad! Static, then silence. Nolan saw his sons being overwhelmed and kicked forward without thinking. Crossed 100 meters in seconds. Slammed into the nearest Viltrumite with enough force to send them both spinning through wreckage. They traded blows, fast, brutal. Nolan was stronger, but the other soldier was fresh. No injuries, no exhaustion. Omni-Man, the Viltrumite grinned. Been waiting for this. Nolan didn't respond. Grabbed the soldier's head, drove it into a floating bulkhead. Once, twice. The grin stayed fixed until the third impact cracked the helmet. Nolan released him. Turned toward where his sons had been. Gone. Mark! He shouted into the comm. Oliver. Nothing. Alan's transmission cut through. Nolan, they're pulling them toward Sector 9. Thrag's position. Nolan's blood went cold. How many? 6 Viltrumites. Moving fast. We can't. Nolan was already accelerating. I'm coming. Behind him, coalition forces scrambled to respond. Ships maneuvered. Fighters launched. But they were slow. Too slow. And the Viltrumites knew it. Jiren tracked the attack patterns across the battlefield. 8 simultaneous strikes. Distributed force, maximum chaos. Deliberate. He analyzed trajectories, assessed casualties, calculated intervention priorities. Medical frigate 12 attackers. Crew complement 400. Probability of total loss without intervention, 93%. Supply vessels 8 attackers. Non-combat personnel. Probability of survival without aid, 11%. Rescue operations, 6 attackers targeting immobilized crews. Certain death without protection. And the 2 young Viltrumites being dragged toward Thrag's formation. Alive, for now. Bait. Jiren's gaze swept across the battle space. Every target equidistant. Every crisis simultaneous. Designed to force choice. He evaluated the equation. Acceptable losses versus unacceptable extinction. Immediate intervention versus long-term stability. The threshold had been crossed. Containment required adjustment. Jiren moved. The first indication anyone had was when the medical frigate's attackers simply stopped. 12 Viltrumites mid-strike frozen in space like someone had hit pause. Their trajectories bent, curved away from the ship. One by one they tumbled backward, limbs flailing, unable to control their momentum. Jiren stood between them and the frigate, hand raised. Pressure radiating outward in a sphere that warped flight paths and crushed inertia. 3 of the Viltrumites tried to push through. Their bones shattered before they crossed 10 meters. The others retreated. Jiren lowered his hand. The frigate's hull groaned, but held. Crew inside scrambled for emergency stations. He was already moving to the next target. The supply vessels never saw him coming. 8 Viltrumites ripping through cargo bays, killing unarmed personnel, destroying critical resources. Jiren appeared in the center of the formation. Didn't speak, didn't pause, just struck. His fist went through the nearest attacker's chest. Clean, efficient. The body jerked once and went still. The others scattered, tried to regroup, tried to coordinate. Jiren moved between them like they were standing still. Each strike precise, each impact lethal. No wasted motion, no excess force. 7 seconds, 8 bodies. He turned toward the rescue operations. The 6 Viltrumites targeting the immobilized crews saw him coming. They didn't retreat. Instead, they grabbed the wounded coalition soldiers they'd been about to kill and held them as shields. Back off, one of them shouted, or they die. Jiren stopped 50 meters out. Assessed the situation. 6 hostages, injured, unable to escape. Viltrumites positioned to kill them instantly if threatened. Standard leverage tactic. He raised both hands. Pressure bloomed outward. Not crushing, just present. Heavy enough to make breathing difficult, to make movement painful. The Viltrumite's grips loosened, just slightly, just enough. Jiren's hands moved. 6 sharp gestures, too fast to track. The hostages dropped, unharmed, pulled backward by invisible force toward the safety of nearby rescue craft. The Viltrumites had half a second to realize they'd lost their leverage before Jiren closed the distance. They didn't get a second after that. Invincible felt the grip on his arms release suddenly. He tumbled forward, disoriented. Oliver appeared beside him, equally confused. "What?" Oliver started. Then they saw him. Jiren stood 20 meters away. The 4 Viltrumites who'd been dragging them toward Thrag floated unconscious or dead. Impossible to tell from this distance. He didn't look at them. Just held position between them and Thrag's formation. A barrier. Nolan arrived seconds later, breathing hard. He saw his sons free, saw Jiren standing guard, saw the bodies. "Get back to the perimeter," Nolan ordered. "Now." But Invincible started. Now they moved. Slowly. Keeping Jiren in sight, afraid to turn their backs. Jiren didn't follow. Just maintained position. A line drawn in space. "Don't cross." And Cecil watched the tactical display update in real time. Casualty projections dropping. Threat markers neutralizing. One after another. Too fast. Too efficient. "He's everywhere," Tech Jacket whispered. "No." Robot's channel crackled. "He's prioritizing. Addressing highest value targets in sequence. Optimal intervention strategy." "How is he moving that fast?" "He's not moving faster. He's choosing better." Robot paused. "And he's no longer limiting output." Cecil leaned forward. "What does that mean?" "It means he's stopped being patient." On screen, Jiren's marker flickered between coordinates faster than the tracking system could update. Each position marked a resolved crisis. Each movement left bodies in its wake. "Estimate casualties," Cecil said quietly. Tech Jacket worked his console. Viltrumite 43 confirmed killed. Coalition medical frigate saved supply vessels, intact rescue operations. He paused. 0 additional deaths. 0. He saved everyone who could be saved. And killed everyone who couldn't be negotiated with. Cecil's jaw tightened. At what cost? Nobody answered. Because they all knew. The cost was coming. But Thrag watched from his formation. Counted the losses. Cataloged the response patterns. Lucan hovered beside him, voice strained. "Grand Regent, over 40 dead. He's exactly where I wanted him." Thrag's expression hadn't changed. "He's committed now. No more observation, no more boundaries. He's intervening directly. That's good. That's leverage." Thrag gestured toward the battlefield. "He's shown us how far he'll go. What triggers full response. How he prioritizes threats." His eyes gleamed. "Now we know his operating parameters. And knowing means we can exceed them." Anissa spoke carefully. "You intend to push harder. I intend to make him choose between saving everyone and maintaining control." Thrag's voice dropped. "And when he can't do both, when he's forced to let something die or escalate beyond recovery," he paused. "That's when we break him. Break him how he just killed 40 of our best. He killed combatants. Acceptable loss." Thrag turned to face his commanders. "Next time we don't use combatants. We use leverage he can't ignore and casualties he can't prevent. We make the choice impossible." "You mean?" "I mean, we make him decide, does he maintain his precious justice, or does he save the people he's supposedly protecting?" Thrag's smile was cold. "Either way, he loses, and we win." Jiren returned to his original coordinates. The battle had ended. Again. Viltrumite forces retreated. Coalition scrambled to secure assets. He stood alone, surrounded by floating debris, bodies, evidence of intervention. His output had increased. Significantly, 3 distinct escalations during the engagement, each calculated, each necessary. But escalation had consequences. The threshold for what constituted acceptable force had shifted. What had been maximum restraint 10 minutes ago was now baseline response. And everyone had noticed. Coalition forces maintained wider berths. Viltrumites regrouped at greater distances. The buffer zone around him had tripled in radius. Fear had replaced uncertainty. Good. Fear maintained order. Fear enforced boundaries. But Jiren also understood the tactical reality he'd shown his hand. Revealed capabilities. Demonstrated that restraint was voluntary, not obligatory. And Thrag would exploit that knowledge. The next attack would test different boundaries. Probe different thresholds. Force different choices. Jiren's gaze swept toward Thrag's distant formation. The Grand Regent hadn't moved. Just watched. Calculating. Jiren knew what came next. The question wasn't if Thrag would escalate. The question was whether escalation would force Jiren past the point where controlled intervention remained possible. And if that happened, he didn't complete the thought. Didn't need to. The answer was written in the mathematics of force. Sufficient power applied without restraint didn't end wars. It ended worlds. Invincible floated near the medical bay, watching Jiren's distant silhouette through the viewport. Oliver sat beside him, both of them bruised, exhausted. "He saved us," Oliver said quietly. "Yeah. So why don't I feel grateful?" The young Viltrumite didn't answer immediately. Just stared at that motionless figure. At the bodies floating nearby. At the wreckage that marked where 43 people had stopped existing. "Because we're not saved," he finally said. "We're just postponed." "What do you mean?" "I mean he can't keep doing this. Can't keep stopping everything. Can't keep choosing who lives and who dies." Invincible's hands clenched. Eventually something's going to happen that he can't control. And when it does, he didn't finish. Didn't have to. They both knew what came next. The only question was whether they'd survive to see it. Nolan found Cecil on the command bridge. Neither spoke for a long moment. 43 Viltrumites dead, Cecil finally said. 0 coalition casualties, perfect intervention, flawless execution. And I'm terrified. Cecil turned to face him. Because that wasn't him at full capacity. That was him being careful, measured, controlled. His jaw worked, and it still looked like divine judgment. Nolan's expression went dark. It's going to get worse. How much worse? I don't know. But Thrag does, and he's going to keep pushing until Jiren either breaks containment or breaks his own rules trying to maintain it. What do we do? Nolan looked out at the battlefield, at the floating bodies, at the figure standing alone at its center. We hope he holds, because if he doesn't... Nolan shook his head. Then pray we're pointing in the right direction when it happens. The right direction. Away. The void stretched empty, silent, waiting. Jiren stood at the center of it all. Unchanged, unmoved. But something had shifted. He'd crossed his own threshold. Demonstrated that restraint was a choice, not a limitation. And now the war would adapt. Test new boundaries. Force new decisions. And sooner or later the equation would become impossible to solve without catastrophic loss. He would be ready. He was always ready. But for the first time since arriving, Jiren acknowledged a variable he couldn't account for, whether being ready would be enough. Thrag made his choice at 0400 hours Coalition Standard Time. He'd positioned every available asset. 37 Viltrumites, the last functional members of the Empire, arranged in 3 concentric formations around a single target, Earth's largest orbital station. Population 12,000, civilian, non-military, protected under every treaty and convention the Coalition recognized, and completely indefensible. Thrag signaled the attack. Cecil saw it coming 6 minutes too late. "Get them out," he said, voice flat, already knowing. "Sir, evacuation would take... How long?" Tech Jacket's hands flew across his console. 2 hours minimum. The station's civilian transport capacity? We have 6 minutes. Silence. Robots channel opened. Recommend immediate broadcast. Instruct station personnel to seek structural shelter. Minimize casualties through. It won't matter. Nolan's transmission cut through. He was already accelerating toward the station. They're not coming to destroy it. They're using it as bait. Cecil's jaw tightened. For who? Nobody answered. They all knew. First, Jiren tracked the Viltrumite formation shift. 37 combatants. Full strength commitment. Trajectory intersecting civilian orbital infrastructure. Calculation time to intercept versus time to breach hull. Insufficient margin. Evacuation impossible. Defensive deployment inadequate. The equation resolved to a single conclusion. Containment had failed. New parameters required. Jiren's posture shifted. Not dramatically. Just a slight settling. Weight redistributing. Preparation for output increased beyond previous thresholds. He exhaled once and released everything. The first indication was the silence. Every sensor in the combat theater went dark. Simultaneously, communication systems flatlined. Tactical displays blanked. Energy readings spiked beyond measurement capacity, then crashed to 0. For 3 seconds, nobody could see anything. Then the void rippled. Space itself bent, warped. Pressure bloomed outward from Jiren's coordinates in waves that made reality stutter. Debris fields kilometers away began drifting backward. Ships not under active thrust found their vectors altered by forces that shouldn't exist. And at the epicenter, Jiren stood unchanged. No aura, no glow, no visible transformation. Just presence compressed to a density that made existence uncomfortable. The lead Viltrumite hit the pressure wall at full speed. His trajectory simply stopped. No impact, no collision, just cessation of forward momentum. He hung there suspended, every muscle straining against invisible resistance. Then his bones started breaking. Ribs first, then arms, spine, pelvis. Systematic structural failure under forces that increased with every millisecond he remained in the zone. He tried to scream, couldn't. Pressure had evacuated his lungs. Jiren's hand moved, fractionally. The Viltrumite's head separated from his shoulders. Clean. Instantaneous. The body tumbled away in pieces. 18 more Viltrumites tried different approach vectors, different speeds, different tactics. Results identical. Jiren didn't chase them. Didn't pursue, just maintained position and let their momentum carry them into the boundary where physics stopped cooperating with biology. Bones shattered, organs ruptured, nervous systems overloaded. Death came measured in microseconds. Invincible watched from 2 kilometers out. Couldn't move. Couldn't look away. "Dad," he whispered. "What is that?" Nolan didn't respond immediately. When he did, his tone carried something the young Viltrumite had never heard before. Awe, terror, both. That's what happens when something decides distance is negotiable. He's not moving to them. He's making space smaller, making their speed meaningless, making resistance futile. Nolan's transmission cracked. He's not fighting, he's just existing. And that's enough. Oliver's channel opened. The station. They all turned. The orbital habitat hung intact, untouched. The Viltrumite formation had collapsed before reaching effective weapons range. Jiren had intercepted them in open space, denied approach. Created a barrier measured in dead bodies and shattered trajectories. 19 Viltrumites eliminated. 30 seconds elapsed. 18 remained. Thrag saw his forces disintegrate and made an immediate calculation. Frontal assault failure. Distributed attack failure. Speed advantage negated. Strength advantage irrelevant. Standard combat had become suicide. He signaled withdrawal. The remaining soldiers broke off. Scattered, not fleeing. Repositioning to coordinates pre-designated for exactly this contingency. Jiren tracked their trajectories, assessed threat level, determined they no longer posed immediate danger to protected assets. He did not pursue, but he also did not reduce output. The pressure remained. The zone persisted. Reality continued bending around him like water around stone. Lucan reached Thrag's coordinates, breathing hard. Blood leaked from his nose. His left arm hung wrong. Grand Regent, we can't... I know. Thrag's expression hadn't changed. Signal Coalition Command. Propose ceasefire under the following terms. Lucan stared. Sir, do it. What terms? Thrag looked toward the distant figure still radiating pressure across cubic kilometers of space. 37 Viltrumites remaining. We cease all hostile action immediately. In exchange, Coalition permits genetic integration program on Earth. Supervised, regulated, but implemented. That's the only option that doesn't end with extinction. Thrag's jaw tightened. He's shown us the ceiling. We can't reach it. Can't break it. Can't survive underneath it. His eyes narrowed. So we change the game. And if they refuse, they won't. Thrag gestured toward the station. Because he can't be everywhere. And if we're forced to choose between annihilation and scorched earth, he left the threat unspoken, but clear. Cecil received the transmission 20 minutes later. Read it twice. Forwarded it to Nolan without comment. Nolan's response came through tight. It's the ultimatum from the canon timeline. Explain. 37 Viltrumites. Integration program. It's what Thrag proposed originally after. Nolan paused. After the war reached a point where continuing meant mutual destruction. Is this that point? Nolan looked toward Jiren's coordinates. The pressure zone was visible even from this distance. Ships couldn't approach within 5 kilometers. Sensors couldn't penetrate the distortion field. Yes, Nolan said quietly. Except this time only one side faces destruction. And Thrag knows it. Then why propose terms? Because he's buying time, resources, a foothold. Nolan's tone went colder. He's not surrendering. He's investing in the long game. And that thing out there, he gestured at Jiren, won't be here forever. Cecil was silent for 10 seconds. Recommend response. Accept immediately. Before he leaves and Thrag realizes he can renegotiate. That's cowardice. That's survival. Meh. Invincible drifted near the medical bay viewport. Oliver beside him. Both staring at the distant glow, where pressure made vacuum luminescent. 19 dead, the young one said. 30 seconds. Yeah, he could have done that from the beginning. Yeah. So why didn't he? Oliver shook his head. Because doing that means showing everyone what you really are. And once they see it, he paused. You can't take it back. Invincible's hands clenched. Is he even still? Him out there? I don't know. Oliver's voice dropped. I don't know if it matters. They watched the glow pulse. Regular, measured, mechanical, like a heartbeat, like a countdown, like something waiting to see if it needed to continue. 3 hours later, the pressure began to fade. Not quickly. Gradually. Controlled descent from incomprehensible to merely terrifying. Systems came back online, communications restored, sensors recalibrated, and at the center of it all, Jiren stood exactly where he'd been. No visible damage, no exhaustion. No indication that maintaining that output had cost him anything. He simply was. Coalition forces maintained maximum distance. Viltrumite survivors regrouped at the edge of sensor range. The station's population evacuated in complete silence. Nobody celebrated. Nobody cheered. Because they'd all seen what happened when restraint ended. And nobody wanted to see it happen again. Thrag received Coalition's acceptance of terms 4 hours after transmission. Standard diplomatic acknowledgement. Neutral language. Immediate effect. The war was over. Not because anyone won, because continuation had become unthinkable. He looked toward Jiren's coordinates. The figure was motionless again. Output returned to baseline. Pressure normalized, as if nothing had happened. As if 19 Viltrumites hadn't been erased in half a minute. As if the fundamental nature of threat assessment hadn't been rewritten, Lucan approached cautiously. Orders Grand Regent. Begin integration protocols. Coordinate with coalition oversight. Select breeding candidates from remaining population. Thrag's expression remained flat. And ensure every Viltrumite understands this is survival. Not victory, not surrender. Survival. And him. Thrag didn't turn. We wait, watch, remember what we've learned. Which is that absolute power doesn't negotiate. Thrag's eyes narrowed. But it does leave, eventually. And when it does, he let silence finish the sentence. Nolan found his son in the observation deck. Invincible stood alone, staring at nothing. You okay? Nolan asked. No. Yeah, me neither. They stood quiet for a long moment. I tried to fight him, the young one finally said. Earlier. Thought I could make him see. Make him care. I know. He could have killed me. In a heartbeat. Like those Viltrumites. Like, his voice cracked. Like I was nothing. But he didn't. Why? Nolan considered the question. Because you weren't a threat. Weren't crossing his boundaries. You were just in the way. That's worse. Invincible's hands trembled. Being nothing is worse than being an enemy. Nolan's hand settled on his shoulder. Being alive is better than being right. Remember that. How do I forget what I saw? You don't. Nolan's grip tightened. You carry it. You learn from it. And you make sure Earth never needs someone like him again. They watched the void together, empty now, silent, waiting. Jiren stood alone. The war had ended. Not through negotiation, not through victory. Through demonstration of capacity beyond resistance. Acceptable outcome. Coalition forces secured. Civilian population preserved. Viltrumite aggression contained within manageable parameters. Integration protocols would maintain genetic diversity while preventing resurgence of imperial conquest. Sustainable equilibrium achieved, justice maintained, but something had shifted, not in the outcome, not in the mathematics of force and consequence. In the observation, every entity in range had witnessed full release, had seen what unrestricted output produced, had truly understood the gulf between restraint and capability. And that understanding changed behavior, made them cautious, compliant, controlled by fear rather than justice, which served the same function, but felt wrong. Jiren dismissed the thought. Feelings were irrelevant. Results mattered, order mattered, containment mattered. The rest was noise. He turned his attention away from the battlefield, away from the treaty negotiations, away from the aftermath. His purpose here had been served. The war would not escalate, would not threaten extinction, would not require further intervention. Time to withdraw, time to return to observation, time to movement at the edge of sensor range. Jiren's gaze shifted. Nothing immediate, no threat. Just the residual wake of something departing, heading toward deep space. Thrag, not fleeing, repositioning. And in that movement, Jiren recognized the pattern. Survival, adaptation, patience. The war hadn't ended. It had just learned to wait. 19 Viltrumites were gone in 30 seconds. That wasn't even a fight, it was just Jiren deciding the war was over. He literally bent space and made physics stop working for his enemies. Well, what I found most interesting here is that the war didn't end because people talked it out. It ended because Thrag realized he was hitting a ceiling he couldn't break. It's a peace built on pure terror. Would you feel safe on Earth knowing the only reason you're alive is because one guy is allowing it? Well, I don't think so, right? The war ended on a Tuesday. No treaty signing, no surrender ceremony. Just a transmission from Thrag's coordinates containing terms and Cecil's acknowledgement 20 minutes later. 37 Viltrumites. Integration Program. Supervised Genetic Diversity Initiative. Earth would host them, monitor them. and hope they never decided supervision wasn't necessary anymore. Mark floated near the observation deck, staring at debris fields that hadn't finished settling. Bodies still drifted out there. Viltrumite, Coalition, frozen, silent, waiting for recovery teams that might never come. How many, he asked quietly. Nolan stood beside him. Total? Yeah. Coalition military 2,300. Viltrumite 68 confirmed. Nolan's jaw tightened. Plus whatever we haven't counted yet. And him, 0. Mark's hands clenched. He killed 19 in 30 seconds. Didn't even get scratched. No. So what was stopping him from just finishing it, all of them? Thrag, everyone. Nolan was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. And I'm grateful we don't have to find out. Are you? Mark turned to face his father. Grateful. I'm alive. You're alive. Earth survived. Nolan's expression went hollow. That's all. Mark looked back at the void. At the space where Jiren had stood through all that accumulated horror. Empty now. Like he'd never been there. Except everyone knew better. Where did he go? Mark asked. Does it matter? Yes. Why? Because if he's still out there... Mark's voice dropped. What's stopping someone else from needing him? From calling him? From... Nothing. Nolan's reply came flat. Nothing stops him. That's what we learned. That's what we have to live with. Cecil stood in the command center, surrounded by screens showing casualty reports, damage assessments, refugee counts. Numbers that would take years to process, decades to recover from. Status on the integration protocols, he asked. Robot's channel opened. Viltrumite compliance total. They're cooperating with all oversight measures, medical screenings, genetic mapping, behavioral monitoring, because they're scared. Affirmative. Current psychological assessments indicate trauma response consistent with they saw what happens when you push too far. Cecil's jaw worked. Good. Let them remember. Tech Jacket spoke up. Sir, about the unidentified combatant. Last sensor reading placed him approximately... I don't want to know. Sir, I don't want to know where he is, what he's doing, whether he's watching. Cecil turned to face the screens. All I want to know is if it happens again, will we get a warning? Silence. Exactly. Cecil leaned back. Start compiling protocols. Threat assessment matrices. Contingency planning for entities operating outside conventional power frameworks. You want us to prepare for him? I want us to prepare for the next him. Because there's always a next. Cecil's expression went cold. And next time, we might not be the ones he decides to save. Alan found Mark in the medical bay. The young Viltrumite sat alone, ribs wrapped, staring at nothing. Hey, Alan said. Mark didn't respond. You okay? Stop asking that. Mark's tone came out sharper than intended. Nobody's okay. We all just survived. Alan settled beside him. Yeah, they sat quiet for a minute. I keep replaying it, Mark finally said. When I tried to stop him. When he just locked me in place. Like I was nothing. You weren't nothing. I was to him. Mark's hands trembled. And the scary part is he was right. I couldn't have stopped anything. Couldn't have saved anyone. All I could do was watch and hope he chose mercy. He did. Did he? Mark looked at Alan. Or did he just choose efficiency? Calculated outcomes? Acceptable losses? Alan's antennae drooped. I don't know. Me neither. Mark's voice cracked. And that's going to haunt me. Thrag stood in the medical section of his command ship. Lucan lay on a diagnostic table, left arm being rebuilt by automated systems. Around them, 16 other Viltrumites in various states of repair. Survivors. Grand Regent, Lucan said carefully. The integration protocols are necessary. Thrag's expression remained flat. We lost. Not to coalition, not to superior tactics. To something we couldn't conceptualize before engagement. You're calling it a loss. I'm calling it survival. Thrag looked toward the viewport. Earth hung visible in the distance. We push, now he returns. We resist, he eliminates. We exist only because he permits it. Then we've surrendered. We've adapted. Thrag's eyes narrowed. He won't stay. Power like that doesn't settle. It moves, observes, intervenes elsewhere. And when he's gone, Thrag's jaw tightened. Then we'll see if Earth remembers how fragile their protection really was. Lucan stared. You're planning. I'm planning nothing. I'm recognizing patterns. Thrag turned away from the viewport. Absolute power enforces absolute compliance, but only while present. The moment it leaves, compliance becomes optional. How long? Years, decades, however long it takes for memory to fade. Thrag's voice dropped. And for Earth to forget that someone capable of stopping us might not be there anymore. 3 days after the ceasefire, Nolan found his son on Earth, Colorado, the house where everything had started to break apart months ago. Mark stood in the backyard, just staring at sky. You didn't tell anyone you were coming down, Nolan said. Needed to see it. Mark's reply came quiet. Needed to remember what we were fighting for. And I don't know if it was worth it. Mark's hands clenched. All those people dead. All that destruction. And we survived because something stronger decided we were allowed to. Nolan's jaw worked. That's always been true. What? We survive because powers beyond us permit it. Viltrumites, cosmic entities, forces we can't comprehend. Nolan settled beside his son. The only difference now is we saw it up close, felt it directly. Couldn't pretend otherwise. So what do? We keep living, keep fighting, keep hoping that next time something that powerful shows up. Nolan paused. It's on our side. Mark looked at his father. And if it's not, Nolan didn't answer, because there was no answer. The rift opened without warning, same as before. No light, no energy signature, just space folding wrong and a figure stepping through the crack. Jiren. He stood in the void where the war had burned, scanned the aftermath. Recovery operations, diplomatic vessels, reconstruction efforts. Sustainable. The violence had been contained. The extinction event prevented. Order maintained through demonstration of capacity. Mission parameters satisfied. He turned toward the coordinates where Earth hung distant. Blue, green, fragile, protected, for now. But protection required presence, and presence required purpose. And his purpose here had concluded. Time to withdraw. Jiren stepped back toward the rift, paused at the threshold, looked one final time at the system he'd kept from collapse. They would remember this. For a generation, maybe two. And then memory would fade. Confidence would return. The same patterns that necessitated intervention would resurface, because that's what civilizations did. They forgot. Jiren turned away, stepped through. The rift sealed behind him, and the void remained. Empty, silent, waiting for the next time someone crossed a line they shouldn't have. Mark saw the sensor alert 3 hours later. Brief anomaly, spatial distortion, then nothing. He pulled up the coordinates, recognized the location, where Jiren had stood after everything ended. Tech jacket, Mark transmitted. Did you catch that? Yeah. Same signature as his arrival. Departure, most likely. He's gone. Looks like it. Mark stared at the empty coordinates. Felt something twist in his chest. Relief, terror, both. Good, he said quietly. But he didn't believe it. Because gone didn't mean forever. Didn't mean safe. Didn't mean they were free. It just meant they were alone again. And next time something threatened extinction, there might not be anyone standing between them and the void. Cecil archived the files 6 months later. Classified. Restricted. Eyes-only clearance reserved for threats requiring immediate planetary response protocols. Designation absolute. Description: unidentified entity demonstrating capacity beyond conventional power. Assessment frameworks: intervention pattern consistent with enforcement-based containment doctrine. Motivation unknown. Allegiance none. Threat level existential if provoked. Status departed. Probability of return unknown. Recommended action: avoid conditions that previously triggered intervention. Maintain conflict resolution below thresholds that attract external judgment. Prepare for possibility of future contact. Final note: if encountered again, comply immediately. Negotiation ineffective. Resistance fatal. Survival dependent on remaining below operational parameters we cannot define, predict, or control. Cecil closed the file, leaned back, and hoped he'd never have to open it again. Thrag read the integration schedule. 20 years. Genetic diversity protocols. Monitored breeding programs. Supervised reintegration into galactic society. Acceptable. For now, he looked toward Earth through the viewport. At the civilization that had survived by luck and the presence of something they hadn't summoned and couldn't control. They think they're safe, Lucan said quietly. They are. Thrag's expression remained flat. For now, while memory's fresh, while fear maintains compliance. And after, Thrag's eyes narrowed. We'll see if their protector is still watching, or if he's moved on to other galaxies, other wars, other civilizations that need reminding of their place. He turned from the viewport, walked away, patient, waiting. Mark never stopped looking at the stars the same way. Every distant light, every sensor anomaly, every unexplained spatial distortion could be nothing. Could be him coming back, watching, waiting for someone to cross another line. And Mark didn't know which possibility terrified him more, that Jiren might return, or that next time he wouldn't.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and be sure to turn on notifications so you won't miss our future videos. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.